To Script Camp's How to Fix Your Script. This is a free class session that is going to be an overview of rewriting and basically going from your first draft to the next draft, and then using that same process probably to go to the next draft and the next draft, etc., and to really make this very organized, methodical approach towards moving your script to the next level or the next stage. So we're in a stage-style channel, meaning that you will have to raise a hand if you'd like to speak out loud. You can click the hand icon to do that, which you can see right here, and then once you are invited to the stage, you do have to click Accept Invitation. This is for everyone watching along with us on Discord, which is where we host all of our classes here on Script Camp. If you're not yet a member, you should come by our Discord server and join us. But if you're watching on a different site like YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook, then we still will be able to see your text comments. It sometimes just takes like a minute or two for it to go through and for us to see it. In any case, thank you guys all for being here. Let's look at what we are doing today and some more info about the... Look at that, finally got my new headshot up. Some info about what this community is and what we're doing. This is Script Camp that you're on right now, which is the main server, the biggest and first server of Skill Camp, which is a group of servers, and we're a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit that offers free and low-cost classes to learn new skills to reach your life goals in many different arenas. So screenwriting is our biggest server with 4,000 members. We just got to 4,000 like yesterday, so we may have some kind of prize for that 4,000th member. We're still working on that. But in any case, we're growing all the time, and our other communities are growing too. So stop by WordCamp for novel writing. Every Saturday from 12 to 2, there's novel writing classes over on WordCamp. We have animation classes on TudeCamp. Code Camp will have coding classes. Lingo Camp has language learning classes. We have a couple other servers too that haven't had classes yet, like Design and Creator Camp and Film Camp and things. We haven't fully built out every single server yet and offered classes on all of them, but we're adding more things to these groups over time. And by simply joining these servers and participating in the community, you're showing that you are interested in that topic, and that people will, by posting and sharing and participating, others will do the same. So, about me, I have been writing scripts for 12 years, moved to LA 2015 with no connections, and got signed for the first time in 2017. Have been signed multiple times since then. In any case, wrote on Creepshow 2019. I was Nicholl semifinalist, and recently, before the strike, I should edit this, before the strike, had features set up at a few major production companies. Now my most recent script is a second round Sundance Labs contestant, what do they call it? Participant, potential, script, whatever it is. So that's kind of where I am. I'm mostly writing in horror, thriller, and action. I focus on features, but know a lot about TV writing as well. And novel writing is my newest sort of obsession. I teach the 90-day novel bootcamp over on WordCamp, 12 to 2 on Saturdays. If you're looking for a group to join, that will give you both accountability and also just a little bit of instruction every week and hands-on activities and feedback and all these things. Check out any of our bootcamps. TV Pilot Bootcamp starts November 19th, 10 to noon on Sundays. Feature Bootcamp starts Fridays, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. That's starting on the 17th. These are brand new sessions, so if you've never written a TV pilot, feature, or novel before, you're very welcome. They're open to all skill levels. And if you'd like to join, you can just go to Script Camp, and you can click down here to sign up for unlimited membership for just $29 a month, which includes access to every single thing on every server. By signing up on scriptcamp.net, you're signing up for all the servers and all the classes. It comes with things like access to video library, which is recordings of previous classes, as well as huge discounts off consultations and proofreads, access to Advanced Lab, weekly Saturday Writers Lab, and lots more. So check this out, scriptcamp.net, if you'd like to sign up for anything beyond just the opening intro weeks of these classes. If you are buying yearly, you will just be paying $19 a month, so saving 40% on your subscription. But then again, you can always just hang out in the community groups and events and go to the free stuff as well. We're glad to have everyone. So there will be a poll in the chat if you are interested in signing up. As soon as Nacho shares this with us, then you'll be able to click these little blue numbers. That will then, there it is, thank you, Nacho. You can click if you're interested in signing up, or if you have questions or anything else, just go to the chat by opening up the Classroom chat channel, mouse over the Classroom chat channel, find that small white word bubble that says Open Chat, and you can click that bubble to open it up on the right side of your screen. So I'm probably not going to start just by doing this discussion just yet, but I will just kind of lay out what this class is for and what you might be looking to learn, and hopefully what we can maybe help you with today. So rewrites is what we're talking about. This is how to fix your script. So this isn't how to write a script to begin with. We have boot camps that are specifically for that, and that take you from idea to finished draft of a script in just 8 weeks for a feature and 6 weeks for the pilot, and it's like 12 weeks for the novel manuscript. But in any case, this is not about how to write a great script. This class is more about the first of all, if you don't have a process of rewriting, creating one and actually forming a method and, repeatable processes that you will use every time you do a rewrite. It's more complicated than just opening up the script and going, I don't know, I guess I changed this here, I guess I changed that there, I guess I just randomly change stuff until finally I'm happy with it. I would encourage you, especially if you're looking to write in TV, where you will be forced to peel apart a story and stick it back together with duct tape and bubblegum and all these things very frequently on an episode-by-episode basis, or even take other people's scripts and do the same thing. These are just skills that you kind of need to build to be employable as a writer in Hollywood. It's not so much that they're looking to buy individual scripts and make whoever wrote that script into a big star. The industry is largely looking for writers, not individual scripts. So if you are a writer, that means you're somebody that can not only come up with the material, but also rewrite, adapt, adjust, cut scenes, move scenes around, and all these other things, because when you're writing features, you become you're not just the guy that wrote the first draft, you become the script department for that movie. And as rewrites need to happen, sometimes very, very quickly on the day, on sets, or maybe not on set, maybe during editing or reshoots or any of these other times, you need to constantly be able to take apart what works and put it back together in a version that addresses other people's concerns and notes. This being, of course, a highly, highly collaborative and social form of writing that we cannot simply do entirely in our attics by ourselves in the grim darkness of solitude or whatever. So there's a couple steps that we're going to need to always be taking. The first step is simply write the script. And often I will go ahead to what I would call, so when I'm just finishing draft the very first time through it and I write the end, that's what I call draft 0, and some people use other terms for this or whatever. Some people call it their vomit draft or stuff like that. My term is much classier and less gross, but whatever, who cares? So yeah, you're finishing the draft of the script, and then from there, I take a couple weeks off and come back to it, and only on my own, without anyone seeing it yet, rigorously go through it and move it up to what I would consider to be a draft 1. So that means removing all placeholders, things where you say insert joke here, and things like that. Anything that's broken or not working or vestigial because it only came up in the early versions of the outline, you need to just prune those out and make sure you are making the best first impression possible, because there's only one time that you get to make that first impression with a script, and ideally you're giving people your best work, and they're showing respect for us by spending potentially a couple hours of hard brain work. If you can, think of how hard it is to get someone to read anything nowadays, and now think how hard is it to get someone that's good at this to actually apply significant brain power to not just reading it, but also assessing the problems and coming up with a plan on the fly, or perhaps afterwards writing up extensive notes on how to fix this thing. That's a lot to ask of someone to do. So we need to do our part by making the read for them as painless and effortless and lovely as possible. Ideally, we want the notes to be, I have no notes, this was amazing and perfect. That's almost never the case, even for professionals. No matter what level you're at, you're almost never, ever, ever going to just get the note, good job, this works, everything's perfect, except if you give the script to your grandma. So just be aware of that. There's always some notes that you will be getting back at every single level of this. And a big measure of what makes somebody who's able to write professionally or who is not is this the ability to take and synthesize large amounts of feedback and figure out what works from it and what doesn't. So the job isn't just doing exactly what everyone says, because it's impossible to do that, because you're getting so many voices in the room, and sometimes you're getting notes from 3 or 4 people that might sort of seem to draw the script in different simultaneous directions. The craft and the reason that the writers who are really, really good at this and can make the big money doing this is because they have the ability to take and aggregate and synthesize all of that data, find what works and filter out the stuff that doesn't, and come out with the best possible next version of that draft. I do this is mostly what I do. Instead of selling features, I'm mostly doing rewrites and polishes on low-budget horror thrillers, usually from writer-directors who want to get extra passes on the script before they take it to their producing partners or things like this. So this is a big, big, big part of the job. A lot of being able to make ends meet as a feature writer is going to come in the form of doing rewrites. And if you're working as a TV writer, so much of what you're doing already kind of fits into that realm of rewrites, taking notes from your showrunner and from the other writers in the room, taking the things that work and making the best possible product that incorporates the functional parts and cuts out or disregards the notes that will bring it into a worse direction. And the nice thing is, the thing that nobody really tells you is that if you ignore a note and the script turns out better for it, nobody's going to remember even giving that note in the first place. The people that are giving you notes are probably giving notes on a ton of stuff, and they just want the script to be better. Like, it's generally, they're not trying to sabotage you, they're trying to make the best possible end product. And if you take 70% of the notes and throw 30% of them in the trash, and the script ends up better, no one will care. If you take half of the notes, nobody will care if the script ends up way better. If you're applying less than half of their notes, maybe you should check to make sure that you are looping them in, and, like, you know, there's a limit, there's a moment of diminishing returns where it's just going to seem like, okay, they're ignoring me. You don't want to seem like you're ignoring their notes, but you do want to go into this with the expectation that you're not going to take absolutely everything they give you as a face value instruction, because the other downside of that is, well, I did everything you said. What did I do wrong? Like, right? Like, you can still get fired off a movie because they're unhappy with your work, even if you're doing exactly what they say, because sometimes the notes that they're giving would simply not improve the story overall. So you have to, and that's expected. That's like part of the process. So you have to, it's always a negotiation. There's always a lot of different people involved, and there's a lot of social dynamics involved, power dynamics, you know, different producers with different seniority levels, which will be giving you different notes at the same time. And so being able to take all that in and not get overwhelmed by it and not get scared off by it, but actually use that as a time where you will say, I'm going to take control of this ship, I can steer it in a positive direction, and I can instill you, the buyers in this case, the customers, so to speak, with the confidence that you are now in good hands. And if someone's coming to pay you for a rewrite, they may have... I've done rewrites on scripts that have had 5 different drafts by 5 different writers before the one that I was finally given. And sometimes you have to read 5 different versions of the same thing. And the people that are giving this to you, it's like a Hail Mary. They're desperate. Their ship is in troubled rapids or whatever, and they need help to get out. And if you come in like, guys, you've got quite a doozy on your hands, then they're going to lose confidence right away, because if you really knew what you were doing, it would be no problem. I mean, well, it would still be a problem, but you want to present it as if you're very fluent and familiar at doing this, like you can quickly assess what the problems are in a story and rearrange the pieces of it that are not working on the fly. Okay, so it's tough to do this, which is just like a preface for any class. It's like, don't expect to be good at this right away. There's no reason why anyone would be good at a very complicated combination of different crafts right away, because, like we said, there's that social element and that element of figuring out who to listen to or how much to listen to them, and then there's just applying your skills to that script, making it feel like it stays in the same voice, and all these things. There's so much that goes into it that this is just really hard. Okay, so let's move on to our just before we begin type steps. So if you haven't gotten feedback on your script, I would recommend you try to get notes from at least 2 different people if you're interested in taking a rewrite project to one of our upcoming boot camps. Or if you're just interested in rewriting a script at all, try to get notes and opinions from at least 2 different people. That is to say, one of them might be a sort of a lay reader. If you have to choose, then obviously you want them both to be very skilled and talented, you know, rock solid, razor sharp, whatever, you know, writers who know exactly how structure works and things like this. But it can be helpful to also get the opinions sometimes of people that are not professional writers or work in Hollywood. They may not have as strong of an understanding of things like structure, but they at least will be able to tell you, are you portraying the world they work in or live in, or the communities they live in, or things like this in an authentic way that avoids the cliches and things they hate and that they're tired of seeing. So definitely try to get a mix of readers of different levels of professionalism. It's not really that helpful to have just random family members who have never read a script in their life read your script, but then again, maybe that could be useful. Chances are they may just not be on the same wavelength at all, and they're going to end up they're going to hand it back to you and just be like, well, nice job, if they even read the whole thing. But in any case, so try to focus on getting 2 sets of notes at the very least. You want to get as many as you can, but 2 is fine. And then there's going to be a script swap on our server free, and you don't have to be a member to do this, but there will be a swap, first of all, immediately after this class is over. So if you have a script that is ready to be traded to someone, at least at that draft 1 status, so don't give us the draft 0 that has placeholders and, things missing, scenes that are like, insert scene here, insert good line here. We don't want that. We want a complete draft. But once you have done that, then you're free to sign up for the swap today, and there's a link in the chat. Thank you again, Nacho, for leaving that link. If you would like to participate in today's swap by trading a script with someone, they're going to send theirs to you, and then you're going to read each other's scripts and give each other that feedback. This is a great way to ensure that you get the feedback as opposed to sending it off to 5 of your family members and you wait 3 months and nobody even opens it. I mean, it's tough to get people to read stuff, so by building in this level of interactivity, or you do something for them, they do something for you, that kind of thing, it becomes much easier to actually get that read and to get that useful feedback from it that somebody actually pays attention to and really tries. Okay, so definitely check that out if you're interested in swapping your script. We also have readings and things like this multiple times a week on the server, so there's plenty of ways to get your script read by other people, by the community, and get feedback on it. So you want to find these sources of feedback before you move any further. We have table reads Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can post your script in the feedback channel if you just want to get responses from anyone on the server at all. You don't exactly know what you're going to get, but sometimes people really work hard on those notes and pay attention and really read. And then last, if you want to get notes from me personally, then what you can do is either, if you're a member, you can bring up to 5 pages at a time to Writers Labs in order to get feedback on individual scenes or short sequences. And then if you want me to read the entire script and spend, the hours reading and marking up and making all those notes, those are called consultations, and I do sell those on the website, so you can check that out at scriptcamp.net/coverage if you really want to hire me to do that. And if you are a member, you do get $100 off of that, so big discounts for members, but you don't have to do that. You can get feedback from free sources, from your friends, from the community, from anywhere. Okay, so Sunday table reads at 2 p.m., Tuesday table read is at 11 a.m., and Saturday table read is at 2 a.m. Pacific time, so that's our international time slot that is more open to people in Europe or Asia or things like this. I already went over the discounts. So before we begin, let's finish off our preface by just saying, if you're spending a lot of time on a rewrite, or if you're spending more than 6 months on any individual script, just start to think about how much content, or what is the amount of content that you're trying to create here. And a script is about 100-ish pages for a feature, and 30 pages or 60 pages for a pilot. That's not that much. We shouldn't be spending 6 months on creating half an hour of content usually. A book, for instance, a novel is could be potentially 50 hours of content. That makes sense to spend a year or 2 years writing something that would take 50 or 60 hours to read through. It doesn't make as much sense productivity and career-wise to only be writing 1 or 2 scripts a year. And I'd recommend, at the very least, if you're writing features, try to write more like 3-4 features a year. Even if you're just learning, it's okay if you can't always make that, but try to write 3-4 features a year. And if you're writing TV, double that. You should be writing 6 TV pilots a year, probably. You don't have to stick exactly to that, but if you're writing only half-hour scripts, then 30 pages does not take a ton of time to do. So try to just be always producing content. And it's your job to, moreover, write a bunch of bad scripts to get to the good ones. So don't get too obsessed over any one and making it perfect, because it's easy to hit that sort of point of diminishing returns where you're just rearranging stuff and moving stuff around and it's not actually improving. You're just adjusting and tweaking and poking at it. And the longer that you poke at it, sometimes it becomes difficult to see what's actually even working or fun about this in the first place. So don't get hung up on a script for too long. You're not going to become a screenwriter by, a professional level screenwriter, by just rewriting the same thing until it's going to win an Oscar. It just doesn't really happen that way. And moreover, once you even start getting attention, the first thing you'll need is a portfolio of scripts to actually bring to those meetings and have other scripts that are ready to share at a moment's notice. And you just need a pretty wide body of work in order to build the skills necessary to become really great at this, and also just to make sure that you have enough material that if somebody asks, what else have you got, you can draw from that and capitalize on those opportunities as they arise. Okay, so let's look at the steps of the rewrite. I'll move out of the way. Whoop. So first of all, we do have to set aside that draft for a bit, like I mentioned. So if you are wondering how long to take, I recommend minimum one week. I mean, it's kind of a made-up number, but when you get to draft 0 and you just write the end, I usually recommend take a week or 2. Then come back and move ahead to your draft 1. So you will have to fix everything that's broken, move things in place of all those placeholders and replacements and things like that. You want to make sure the script is complete and everything adds up and makes sense. There are no huge plot holes or logic gaps or characters that go missing or typos or things like this. Typos do matter, and proofreading matters. I know this is especially difficult if you are not a native English speaker, for instance. But you are being graded by the same rubric as everyone else, even if you are not a native English speaker. So you need to be able to write at a fluent what do we call it? A1? Is that how they rank fluency? Level. You need to be able to write equivalent to a native speaker, of course. And that includes things like grammar, punctuation. All the little stuff doesn't really matter that much if the script is really firing on all cylinders and it's really working. Nobody's going to care that much if they see a typo on page 18 and 38 and 61 of an amazing script. Nobody cares. But if they're kind of on the fence and they're lagging in confidence, and their confidence is starting to wane, and they are seeing typos on page 1, then you're damaging that reader's attention, and you're not setting yourself up for success in the way that you need to be. You need to show that remember, the ship is sinking. You need to prove to them and instill the confidence in your collaborators or your producers, whoever it is that you're working with, that you will be able to write this disaster and fix this and get this back on course, and that there's not going to be any major issues. So that's why things like grammar and punctuation and stuff, they're not the end-all be-all, but they do matter, and they count. They count against you if you get them wrong. So try to really go through and pay attention. If you have to, review your Strunk and White or whatever else it is, take an English class, something like this, whatever it is that it takes you to try to write with as perfect grammar and punctuation and spelling as you can. That's what you got to do. It doesn't at the judgment day when you face the producers at the pearly gates or whatever, they won't really hold it against you consciously, but it is damaging to your read to not have perfect spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Okay, so we have set aside the draft and move it up to draft 1 from draft 0. Then next we have your feedback. So you got to actually get the reads, whether that's through some kind of live reading, or maybe that is through a swap or something else. We have a clarification in the chat. C3 is native speaker. Okay, got it. Thank you for that. Yeah, I forgot exactly how the letter system worked. Okay, so you'll start with move to draft 1, and then you got to get that feedback. So participate in a swap if you want to, or a reading, or anything else, or just send it around, and you have to wait a little while for people to actually read it. How long should you give someone to read a feature script? I would say you can check in after a month. If it's been 2 months, it's not happening. For TV, maybe you can, since they're so much shorter, you could have those times if you really want to. So wait, 2-3 weeks. If 2-3 weeks go by, ask about it. If another 2-3 weeks go by, they're not going to read it, probably. So it's too bad. But this is just, people are busy. They have a lot going on. Unless you're paying them, they don't really owe you anything. If you're swapping with them, then they do owe you something. So that's why these events and activities where we organize and incentivize the feedback are just useful to have available to you. Nacho has mentioned in our chat that script swaps that we have on our server are 1 week turnaround. That's actually really quick. And it's difficult in normal circumstances to get someone to read a full script and give you detail, incisive feedback within a week. So take advantage of that if you can. So we make our feedback and notes document. As we move through this presentation today, I will bring up examples of all these things as we go into more detail on any of them. So we get your notes. So all of your readers are either going to be giving you written notes, or you are going to have to talk to them on the phone or in person or over Zoom or whatever you have. And then you are going to have to write down what they say and make a list of bullet point notes. And because not everyone's going to make the time to write stuff out extensively for you. You will have to make the effort yourself if they are only giving you those notes verbally. And either one is fine, and you just have to be aware that often in Hollywood, working with development executives, it's going to be only verbal notes. They're not writing stuff down, or they might be marking up the script with stickies here and there, but mostly it's just going to be them talking to you on the phone and telling you stuff, and it's you that has to write the notes down and remember them all. Okay, so you want to get the notes, and then you're going to separate them by, you can sort them by date or by the person giving them, or you can kind of sort them by where they would chronologically fall in the script or anything else you want. But on your notes document, you're basically just making a list of all the things that people have said that they would like to see changed or made different in the script in whatever way. Then once you have that, you do have to kind of reorganize them a little bit and figure out which ones are working and which ones aren't, which ones you agree with, and you can prioritize those things that have showed up multiple times. If 2 or more different people have said the same thing, chances are you should write that one down and highlight it, because those notes are going to be something that are more likely to be detected, or feelings more likely to be felt by the audience. If it's just one reader that says something, it doesn't mean too much on its own unless you really, really trust that reader and their opinions. And even so, sometimes if you really disagree with it, it can be worth then taking it to a few more readers and see if... Don't queue them up. Don't say, hey, did you find this was a problem? But give it to them blind and see if they remark on the same thing. If they do remark on the same thing, it's probably an issue that you should resolve. So you need to look at those notes, and the commonalities between the notes are things you should highlight and pay more attention to. The other stuff, I would not delete it, but you can move it to a different part of the notes document if you want to. Then what you're going to make is a re-outline. So re-outline is where you are going to make a new card outline. So using what I call, or a lot of people call, scene cards. You're going to make an outline that reflects the version of the script that you ended up with, not your original vision, because so often things will change or be not exactly how you planned it, or you'll go a little off track, or anything else like this as you are just moving through an outline. So you have to make a new outline that reflects the new version of the script as you have it, with warts and all. So it's got to have the scene, even if you end up with a scene card that's like, Joe and Jackson sit in the cafe and talk about mostly nothing. Well, if that's what the scene is, then you will have to write that down, because your job right now during the re-outline is not to be solving problems. It's just to come up with an outline for the script that you have so you can see it from as far back as you possibly can and get the entire thing into your head. So the re-outline is actually a pretty important step here. And especially if you're working with collaborators, you're going to want that re-outline to be as readable as possible, but still brief. So each scene card should be maybe 2 to 4 sentences at the most, I would say. If you're only writing it for yourself and you don't have collaborators, you can use more shorthand. And you can use, just use the character's first initial or whatever, and you know who it means. You don't have to clarify. Or you will write just a scene that's just they fight, big battle. And you know what the results of it are, because you're writing in your own sort of shorthand, so you don't have to clarify stuff. If you're writing this re-outline with the intention of working with other people, either co-writers or it's for producers or someone like this, you should put the extra effort into making it make sense on its face. So it will take some extra words. You should spend the extra sentences as needed on these new scene cards in the re-outline. Okay, so once you have finished that re-outline, so again, that's just a full outline of the version of the script that you have, you're going to combine that with your notes document. So you're going to make another brand new document, and you're going to, which is a copy of your re-outline, by the way, because you want to maintain the original version of that document and make sure that you have a clean edition of it that's set aside. And then you are going to make the revision guide by taking that copy of the re-outline, taking the notes that you've been given and moving them to the places where you need to make the changes. If you want a visual demonstration of this, I will show some when we get to that point. This is just the overview stuff right now. But so you're going to take that re-outline, you're going to put the notes into the places where you think they will go in the script next to their scene cards, and you can mark up those scene cards to indicate other things that should change. And you're going to color code the entire thing using our sort of stoplight system, green, yellow, red. Green being this needs to stay the same and is fine. Yellow meaning this needs to change or is in progress or I need to pay attention to. And red meaning this needs to be cut. And then you're going to fill out your entire revision guide that way. Then when that's totally done, you're going to move ahead into the rewrite, where you will open up a new blank script document, blank page, and you're going to start from 0. And you can copy and paste in scenes from the last draft of the script as needed, but don't make that your default thing that you do, because you need to leave room for this new version of the script to sort of breathe and to create that new sort of connective tissue between moments that wasn't there before. You don't want to feel locked into the stuff that was in the previous draft, so don't always copy and paste from the previous draft, but you can here and there if you need to. And then you're going to work through it. You're going to try to implement all those notes that are in your revision guide, keeping up with your color coding so that you're marking it as you work through it, and you're marking things green as they are finished, and you can thereby sort of keep really clear a really clear vision of the progress you're making through the script. And then when you're finally done, then you will move on to the last step, which is extra passes. So extra passes are going to be just individual reads and adjustments through the script where you will say, okay, this pass is just for dialogue. I'm just looking at dialogue, or maybe just for this character, or maybe just for action scenes, or maybe just any one individual element at a time that still needs the adjustment and fixing at the end stages. And you'll do as many of those as you need, maybe 3 to 5 per draft. And then once you're all through that, you're going to give it one final read through for proofreading and for, make sure that all your T's are crossed and all your character names are not switching around and things like this. And you will have the official next draft that you can, in fact, title name of script _ draft 2. Until you do all this stuff, I would not be labeling other little changes of the script. It takes a lot to actually come up with another draft, right? So I wouldn't be labeling every little change you make as draft 2.1.3 or whatever, draft 3.5. Don't be doing half drafts. Don't be doing point whatever. Do a complete pass through that you have written beginning to end and checked through multiple times and given your due diligence and your hardest work, and that's a draft. A draft is not just little changes here and there. Okay, so we have some comments in the chat. Carmen says, rewriting feels like total chaos to me. Well, hopefully this process will bring order to that chaos, and by taking it, just like any element of this, we can just take it one step at a time, break it into smaller pieces, and by finishing each piece in order, we will create this kind of procedure, this plan, this method, and you will go into the next one even more organized, and the next one even more organized, and you will build your own process that way. Okay, so that's the overview of all of the rewrite steps. I'm going to go into more detail on each of them in turn, but I want to stop so far and just see if there's any questions on what we've talked about so far, or anything that you guys are wondering or would like to ask. We're not going to go into deep diagnosis of your script's problems, but if you have a question that we can answer in just the next couple minutes, feel free to either raise a hand or to write into the text chat, and I will read it out loud. I'll give you guys a minute to do that. All right, here's a question from Judea. On the topic, how do you motivate yourself to keep going? I feel like it's easier said than done to not just stick onto one page, re-editing it over and over again. Good question. So how do you motivate yourself to keep going through rewrites? Well, I will say doing this as an assignment or a job, it goes a long way to motivating me personally. I know this is not always an option, or we are oftentimes not doing this for money or to be paid. We are often just writing to improve and to hopefully get to the point where we can be paid for something next. So you can't always have that, the fact that it's your job and you have to. But even if you don't, I guess I would try to reframe your thinking so that you sort of pretend that you do, and that you're not just doing this as a passion project. Not everything can be a passion project. And in fact, the majority of what you're doing kind of it simultaneously is and isn't a passion project, right? Because it's if you wouldn't have chosen it unless you really cared about it and wanted to write it. And if you're early stages in your career, you don't have a manager yet, then you can write whatever you want. And you have that sort of unprecedented ability to pick whatever concepts you want. But at the end of the day, if you want to do this as a job, then I guess I would just approach it as if you have a boss that's standing over your shoulder, cracking the whip, maybe even planning for events like a swap or something like that in advance to give yourself the deadline and to say, okay, no matter what state it's in, when I get to there, it has to be done. So thereby, it's not really dependent on your motivation or feeling great about the script to work on it. You should do as much as you can. I know it's hard. As artists, we are passionate about our ideas and we want to write them because we think they're good, but you need to distance yourself from this and say, I just need to get to the end so I can get to the next idea, and approaching it a little bit more robotically or it's already your job, by self-imposing those deadlines or by having an accountability partner or taking part in a boot camp or anything else that will just add that sense of, low stakes, fake urgency that you were not going to get fired or lose money or whatever if you don't actually deliver on it. But I think you should just start early on just training your brain to not be dependent on motivation. Motivation isn't the only thing making this happen. You're doing this because it's what you do. You're doing this because it's your job, and you're a machine that writes scripts. No individual script is, your masterpiece or the best thing you'll ever write. You'll never write anything better. So just, I guess, remember that you'll only improve more and more the more you do this, but the only way to really improve is by kind of treating it like it's your job, if that's what it takes in order to motivate you to finish that next draft and send it off or be done with it, whatever it is. So, and also, like, you can always, if something's really, 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 really not working, there's nothing forcing you to keep working on it. You can always put it aside for a while and move on to something that is really working. But if you find yourself doing that as like a defense against having to put in the really hard, painful work of rewriting, then you may have to change something else in your process. So yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, be a little robot guy if that's what helps you become R2-D2. Nacho says, I have one thing that motivates me is I have a list of a bunch of fun ideas that I really want to write, so I have to finish this one before I start on the next one. Yeah, exactly. We always have like kind of a... It's like the best script in the world is the one that you want to write next, and the worst script in the world is the one that you are currently working on. It's just a very common feeling that writers get. What else? Any other questions or comments? Let's see if we have any more in the chat. Dan says, I keep hearing it's discipline, not motivation. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think a runner that's preparing for the Olympics every day is like, this is going to be the best run ever. They're just like, I need to do the run. Carmen says, I often don't feel like writing, then I do, and then I'm happy. There you go. Yeah, it's like, again, I always use this gym metaphor. You go to the gym, tell yourself, I'm just going to walk in and just do one lap. But then you do one lap and you're like, well, I might as well do a couple more. It's if you get yourself in the proper mood and mode, then it helps a lot. Ravenstar asks, how do you deal with perfectionism having you feel compelled to edit a script over and over because you're so focused on getting it perfect since you only have the one shot at pitching it? You only have one shot at pitching it? You mean something that you've already lined up as a pitch in one way, maybe? If you have already secured a pitch for a script, then it's a little different, right? Because if you've been hired for this, or you know that you have some deadline coming up for this, then the stakes are a little higher. Like if you often, it's true, you only do really have one chance to get somebody to read a script or listen to a pitch before they're like, all right, I've heard enough, right? So how do you get over this perfectionism thing of feeling compelled to edit a script over and over again? You have to build up trust for yourself, if that makes sense. It sounds ridiculous, but you have to work on the skill of trusting yourself more. And first of all, in order to trust yourself more, in order to have a reason why you would trust yourself more, you have to write a lot of scripts. So by writing a lot of scripts, you will prove to yourself and to the world that you have what it takes, you can do a good job, that you placed in that contest one time and no one can ever take that away from you, or things like this. And by just doing a lot of work until your skills improve and you get to the point where you're producing great, noteworthy scripts, that will build up like the sort of fallback that you can always have in the back of your mind is, well, I did this before. I've done this before. I have clearly proven that I am capable of this. There's nothing that would actually stop me from pulling this off. It may not be perfect, but almost no scripts are perfect, even at the professional level. Everyone gets notes. Everyone goes through iteration. Musicals workshop for years as they, even the biggest stars in the world iterate on the draft again and again and again. So a script is not a final product. It's an invitation to collaborate on essentially a company, right? A script or a movie is a company that employs more than 100 people, potentially for the better part of a year or a little longer. A TV show is a massive company that employs hundreds of people for multiple years. So the script is like the blueprint to get you in the room to start having conversations about what that company could be. There's no one saying that a script has to be perfect. So that was like 3 or 4 different answers to that question. I hope at least one of those helps you out. No one's expecting scripts to be perfect, I guess is what I would say. Hopefully that helps too. Leckliger says, the more you force yourself to write, the easier you fall into that creative headspace too. Yeah, exactly. Creativity is not some magic fairy that can only be caught in a jar once every 100 years as it appears with the passing of a strange comet, right? It's like you're making chairs, you're making desks and tables, you have to just saw the wood. Okay, let me check if there's any last questions. We have a comment on Twitch from Autumn Aesthetic. It says, I haven't started a script. Whoops, NaNoWriMo is here. Well, yeah, you might as well start it now. The best time to start is yesterday. The second best time is right now. Isn't that what they say in somewhere? Someone said that once, certainly. You'll only need to pull off about 40,000 words if you're writing a book at this point. Or what is it, 50,000 words in November. And if it's a script, well, they're a lot shorter than a book, so I bet you can pull off a script in 4 weeks if you get started and work hard. All right, any other last questions before I move on to individual steps of the rewrite process, starting with feedback? Ravenstar says, I'm thinking in regards to editing and re-editing a passion project, you might have an opportunity to pitch it even if you've written 10 scripts. Okay, this is not a question, this is a response to Nacho's comment. We have another comment. The script is a skeleton. Without good strong bones, the rest is just a pile of mush. Yeah, exactly. Good points. Okay, so shall we start to go through individual... If you're typing a question or comment, you can proceed to, and I will check them routinely as we move through the class, of course. But we're going to move ahead to looking at feedback and what that feedback or notes document should look like, and how to start making the re-outline and combining those things together into our full revision guide. This might be more prep than you've done for this before. A lot of the steps of my kind of process are more methodical and organized than you may be used to doing. And it may seem like a lot of work, but I guess I will just ask that you trust me that it becomes a lot easier when you have these processes in mind, especially if you're dealing with like notes from 4 different people on 5 different drafts of a script. It's so hard to keep this all straight unless you have this plan, unless you have this method. If you're just opening it up every time and just changing random things as you see fit, you are not going to get hired very much. Okay, so let's get into feedback and notes. So if you haven't already done this, and if you're participating in our swaps either today or upcoming this week, you want to make a notes document. So you can go to Google Docs, you can make a new document and just call it notes. There's no special trick to this. We'll just call it script notes or whatever you want. And then underneath that, you're going to just do bullet points. If you're taking verbal notes from people, then this will often be you writing down maybe 10 to 15 different bullet points per person. If they're giving you notes themselves, who knows how much they've given you? It might be an entire page or more. Let's look at the notes document. So yeah, first of all, you can just do this right now. There's not almost anything else that you have to have on here except for script notes. You can include the draft if you want to. So revision to, or we could say notes to second draft if you want to keep it even straighter. You can put a date on it if you really want to, or anything else. Write your name and date in the top right, like it's a 5th grade spelling test. Okay. So let's look at the notes document I've gotten for my revision to draft 5 of my Spec Fiendish Dogs from 2021. So I'm always starting with big ensemble scripts. I start with the very basics and then a character list on the first page. It's helpful to write out a character list if you have a lot of characters in your story. This is for you. This isn't necessarily for your readers, but then again, if you're doing notes and you have this, it might be useful to send this to your reader so they can refer back to the cast more easily. Okay, let's look at the notes themselves. So I've kind of ranked mine from most important to things I deemed less important, and you can see there's still a little color coding left on my draft right here, so let's just pretend like I've just gotten this document. Nothing's color coded yet. And then these are just like a straight bullet point list chronologically of things that should change throughout the script. There's a lot of bullet points here. As you can see, it's a complex 100 and 15-page story with 12 main characters. There's a lot going on in Fiendish Dogs, so there's a lot of notes. So you try to arrange them in as chronological order as possible. And then you can move the biggest stuff to the very top if there's like something that needs to be persistently addressed throughout the entire script. I would leave those at the very top, and then underneath you want to kind of put them in a rough order. And then from there you do have to decide which one. Like, you first of all make your whole notes document, and then when that's done, you'll make your re-outline. You can see in mine, this is not with collaborators, this was for me, so the scene cards are often as simple as just a single sentence. I do not need to go into more expanded versions of everything happening in these scenes or all the different moving pieces, because I kind of know. But it is helpful to have these scene titles. I even title the scenes themselves to clarify what that specific scene is for. There doesn't have to be any art to that either. Dorian wants to quit. Okay, that's an easy scene, right? Somebody wants to quit the gang that they're in. Or we have, just basic titles for the scenes, just to help clarify what's going on in that moment. And then if it turns out in the adjustment period you need to change the scene, you can change the title. So this is a full re-outline with structural headings, with page numbers, and with scene titles. So you will have to go through and mark out the page numbers as well. So that would be, like pages 1 to 2, this happens, page 3, this happens, page 4 to 5, etc. And mark out a really detailed plan of what the entire script looks like. Okay, so then when you're done with that, remember you make your copy for your re-outline. So you go to File, make a copy. That way you have the old re-outline that you can refer back to completely clean if you need to. And you can use this new one to start to add in your notes. So I'm going to go back to my notes document. I'm going to just take a random note, Ezo challenges Ken publicly. I'm going to find the part where Ezo challenges Ken, and this time instead of making it private, I'll say, first of all, mark it in yellow as a change. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Instead of in private, Ezo challenges Ken publicly. There we go. And you're going to do that with all of your notes. And at first it's going to be white with just the yellow, because the yellow are things that need to change, right? Or maybe you decide to do some things that weren't even in the notes that you were given. You're like, instead of Credence and Nellie in this scene, what if it was Frederick and Nellie instead? And then you just mark that part as yellow. So that's something that needs to change, right? And then everything that needs to stay exactly as is, or that you finished, as you go through the script, you can mark them up as green. So that's what I call a stoplight system, where green indicates something is completely fine as is. Keep it. Yellow means change it, or it is being changed, or it's something's not done there. I need to come back to that later. And red means that's probably going to be cut, and as you're working through the revision guide, actually doing the pages, I recommend deleting the red notes or changing the highlight from red to green. You don't want to have any red on the page by the end. Okay, so that's how we build out the revision guide. By the end, it's going to look like, we have some green stuff, a lot of yellows, and a few reds here and there. Like that. Okay, so questions on re-outline, incorporating feedback into your revision guide, or anything else? I know this is kind of boring craft logistic-y stuff, but hopefully this can help you find your own organization methods through your rewrite process.
Your outline is different from the notes document, right? So you're making, and then, I don't know, did anyone have trouble following, or?
Yeah, feel free to ask now if you need. I missed the first part of my headphones dropped out for a second. So was this a question, Nacho, or was this just you asking the room if anyone needs help?
I just I wasn't sure if everyone followed that it was like a different document, or that, because Connor had already a list of all the scenes in the script.
Yeah, that was the re-outline. So we started with the re-outline and then made a copy of it to act as our revision guide. So you could even retitle that by clicking the top left here. Whoop. So I would change this into Fiendish Dogs Revision Guide, like that. All right, let's check to see if we had any last questions. Jill says, these are really exams. Yes, there's a lot of kind of paperwork, I guess we'd call it. Very fiddly organization, craft stuff, but makes your life much easier. Okay, if there's no more questions on this, I'll keep going through the rest of this and explaining, just clarifying the last couple steps and sort of going into what to do afterwards, and how to go through passes. How do you know when it's done? Questions like this. I want to remind everyone that, first of all, boot camps are coming up. So if you're interested in rewriting something, you might consider bringing that script to the boot camps, but they don't include notes, so you do have to get your own notes, either in a swap. Oh, my bad. Either in a swap or in a table read or something like that. So keep in mind, getting notes from everyone is not part of the boot camps. But if you are looking to do a rewrite, come by Sundays 10 to noon for TV, starting on the 19th, and 6 to 8 p.m. for features starting on the 17th. In Novel Bootcamp, we're writing full books in 3 months, 90-day Novel Bootcamp. So that's going to be Saturdays 12 to 2 PST. That's ongoing right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is finish off the last couple slides, and then it looks like since we have a lot of time and there weren't as many questions as I thought there might be, then I'm going to open the floor and say, what problems are you having in your scripts? How can I help? Or what questions do you have that need to be answered? What's the most that I could help with your rewrite in the 10, 15 minutes that we have you on the stage? So we'll have a little time for that during the last part of class today. And then if no one wants to do that, then we might just, we can always end before the 2-hour mark. Nobody needs to stay past midnight on the East Coast. We have a question from Nacho. Does everyone understand what a re-outline is? I think we skipped that part. Did we skip that part? I thought I just did that. I may not have done the slides on it. Did I skip a slide? Joel says I did with revision guide, he thinks. Okay. So, maybe I'll just do the slide on it just to recap what the re-outline looks like. So, this is a list of every scene in your script where you're going to describe what happens in just basic prose format, really simple as possible, 1 to 4 sentences for the most parts. It can include page counts, so this is really useful. You don't always need to do this, but I just think it's a good habit. You're going to include exactly which pages those scenes fall on. It shouldn't be too hard to do. You have the script right in front of you, so you can just tell this scene takes us from pages 1 to 2. This scene takes us from pages 3 to 5. You should definitely have an understanding of where one scene is beginning and one scene's ending. Again, if you are working with someone else, make this easier to read and understand. And then, yes, we went over how the re-outline becomes your revision guide when you make a copy of it and apply the notes to it. Okay, so if there's no more questions on any of those basic definitions, then we'll go into some additional clarification on these last few points. So, what if your script has major, really big problems? If you have major structural problems, it might be helpful to simply go back to basics on outlining and rewrite out a list of the story beats. So this is like not just re-outlining the scene cards, but you're going to re-outline the story beats themselves. for anyone who doesn't know or who's not used these before, story beats are going to be things like you mark out all the different structural headings of the different parts of a script. So we have like intro, catalyst, act breaks, midpoint, stuff like this. And you might, if your script has really big problems, you are first of all going to need to do a rewrite of the story beats. So first of all, write out what you have, and then you might need to adjust from there. Before you get into the weeds on scene cards, you might just be doing about 1 page total for the entire story, broken down into bullet points per structural heading. And just do this more sort of zoomed out version of the re-outline before you get too deep into it. If you don't know how story beats work or how structure works, we have like probably 100 hours of recordings of me doing classes on it that you can find on our YouTube channel, or you can come to the bootcamps, feature or TV, whatever you're interested in learning more about structure for. The first 2 weeks of every bootcamp are usually going to be free, so you can come by and ask whatever questions you have, or check out any of the many resources we have on structure, but you gotta kind of learn this stuff. What else? So we have a bulleted list of all the key kind of major moments in your protagonist's journey, and if you have such substantial issues with the script that you are intimidated by getting into it, start really zoomed out. Start in this very simple version of it that can take place on just about a page before you start with the re-outline and things like that. What else do we want to include here? So I went over the color coding system and how to use that. When you go into pages, or when you move to pages, as we sometimes say, again, I recommend you create that blank, completely new screenplay file. It seems sort of like, oh no, my hard work is all gone for a second, but you'll quickly get over this, and it will just leave more sort of blank psychological space for you to imagine that things could be different in from how they kind of were locked in before. I would recommend having your old script open in a separate window, or to export it for a format that's easier for copying the text. Like, for instance, TXT or HTML files are way easier to copy and paste text from than and text that maintains its formatting, as opposed to PDFs, which are actually really difficult for some reason to copy and paste text from. So for the most part, you'll want to re-export that old draft of your previous draft of your script as a HTML, and then be able to copy and paste that from that into your new working script document as needed. And you're going to start on page 1 and just move through your draft, and as you finish sections, you're going to update your revision guide. I mean, the reason we call it a revision guide, not just revision outline, is because you're going to be marking it up. So as you finish up scene 4, right? Mark it green. You get to these parts. Oh, you cut both those scenes. Then delete them. Fix the numbers. Mark it green. So it should all look like this by the end. This is the intention, is for the entire re-outline to be marked green like that. If there's anything that's still yellow, that indicates that that's something you still have left for yourself to review, or something that still needs to be checked, researched, or changed. So as you are going back through this for the 1000th time, then you can mark green anything that you feel is no longer necessary, or you have resolved adequately for whatever reason. All right, let's go into extra passes. So the extra passes are when you have finished with the initial pass through the script. So you've gone through your revision guide all the way. You've marked everything that was yellow or red, and you've changed it to green by now. So you've satisfactorily, at least to the highest ability you can, to your standards, you have changed the major things that need to happen. You fixed the major problems. And now you are ready to kind of polish it off. So that means that you're going to have to assess if anything needs an individual pass. So that might just be in your original notes document. It may have just been something like, dialogue all throughout needs work. That's a big note that you're not going to really put anywhere chronologically on the revision guide, except maybe at the very top or the very bottom. But that's indicating that something needs to change all throughout the script. So that's something that would just take a whole pass. So wait until you finish all your plot editing stuff before you get into the passes. A pass shouldn't be something like the plot doesn't work. By now you've fixed the plot problems. Extra passes are going to be things like B story, C story, so subplots, not the major stuff that happens, but the little things that happen. Character arcs, so the things that are happening to your characters, the choices that they're making, the fates that they end up with, and the ways that those various stories intersect or don't. We have characters, so maybe the characters themselves you need to go through and check for things like specificity of that character's personality, consistency of their motivations, or clarity of their motivations if it's not really apparent why they're doing what they're doing, or what is driving them at any stage, or what specifically they're trying to accomplish, or anything like this. Prose and formatting, that's going to be stuff like typos, grammar, ESL speaker problems, or things like this. All the proofreading stuff, as well as just the words on the page. Try to make them not repetitive. Try to make them lovely and evocative, and always use this principle of clarity, brevity, voice, in that order, with clarity being at the top is the most important thing, brevity being the second step. So once you've expressed yourself perfectly clearly, then you have to reduce as many words as possible that maintains that clarity and meaning of the line. And then your last sort of pass through any individual line or page or scene should be voice. So now that you're perfectly clear with what you mean, and you have said it in as few words as you possibly can, the last step is to use your artistic voice and vocabulary and all these things to change words here and there to feel as though the text has a specific voice and opinion on what's going on. It feels unique and like it could only have come from you, and the details that you notice and include in the way that you describe things feels in keeping with your personality as a writer, and all of these things. So don't worry way too much about the voice thing. If you like your first two, the C and the B, are way more important than voice, and voice is sort of like a natural byproduct of just doing really good clarity and brevity for a long time. So if you find yourself saying, how can I improve my voice? You shouldn't really apply too much conscious effort towards that, in my personal opinion. In any case, clarity, brevity, voice. Clarity, always first. And last we have tone. So tone is going to be things like the mood of the scenes, and that can be built in a combination of stuff, right? Like a combination of the atmosphere. You can build tone through you can build a kind of unsettling tone through creepy atmospheric details or cinematography, or all the effects, the dripping of the rainwater from the gutters and the fog that hangs low around the tombstones and all these things. You can create specific moods that way. The dialogue, obviously, the things that your characters are saying and the things that those characters consider to be normal or appropriate go a long way towards creating a tone. Obviously, if your characters are in a world where, I don't know, they get their hamburger a little too late, so they punch the cashier in the face, and everybody's kind of fine with it, then you're creating a very broad, slapstick kind of comedy tone, right? Just because of those basic character choices and the way that people reacted to those things. So things like that are actually often really key towards establishing tone, establishing what is normal and congruent in the world that your story takes place in. So tone is actually kind of tricky to nail sometimes. And if your readers are getting the wrong emotional response or general feeling, or they're feeling like, this seems like it's supposed to be funny, or this seems like it's supposed to be dramatic, but I'm not feeling those things, that is an indication that something is miscalibrated in the tone. And you may need to just you need to take a step back and ask, why are they getting that feeling from it? Do I have too many jokes in the story, or in the dialogue, for instance, or is the ending too ruthlessly depressing for this to feel like a rom-com at a certain stage? So you have to kind of, on a case-by-case, script-by-script basis, assess why specifically people are saying that elements of the tone are misaligned. And then if they are, you need to kind of, even in your notes stage, kind of be thinking of ways to address that. Again, these would be the big notes that you put at the very top, at the very bottom. But a big note in terms of tone might be something like, too ruthlessly depressing. Or might be something like, too light and comedic. Or anything within that very broad spectrum. Okay, so those are the major types of additional passes. You might have other sort of types of passes that you do as well. Specific characters, subplots, or like character arcs are often these big things that come up. So it's more than just character personality or vocabulary or quirks or things like that. It's often like, what are the actual individual steps of this character's journey, and how is that supporting and amplifying the other ones, and by the end, leading to that kind of great, satisfying, inevitable conclusion, the unexpected yet inevitable conclusion. All right, we have a request to speak from Nacho. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I've noticed in all the scripts of yours that I've read, like the tone is really like specific, right? It feels like consistently this feels like something that fans of this kind of genre or this tone would like really enjoy. Is that something that, like, I mean, at this stage, do you still have to like work at that consciously, like going back in, when you're preparing your draft one or whatever stage, like, or is it something that just flows from having read a lot of scripts and watched a lot of movies in those genres, or?
So personally, for me, I don't work way too hard at that. It helps that I'm normally writing in the same couple genres in different mediums. So like for features, I'm usually writing horror, thriller, and action. And these are all genres that rely on things like tension and suspense and atmosphere and stuff like, and similar atmosphere and stuff like that. So I don't worry way too much about it. But if you're wondering just how to go about doing that, think of each script as a character, or each narrator as a character. So think of like, what are the details that specific person would notice, remark upon, or draw attention to. Like, think of, what's a good example? Tales from the Crypt, obviously it's my favorite comic of all time. I read on Creepshow, so I'm going to always come back to Tales from the Crypt. But the narrator has such a specific presence in Tales from the Crypt, right? We know the kind of story that we're getting because he cackles at the beginning as he tells us what the name and the theme basically are. And the idea that you're going to tell us a horror story, but the narrator themselves is kind of laughing at or taunting or mocking the people in it, that's like just a very sort of like fun 1950s horror comic, Stephen King kind of tone that you can go for. And it also affects things like the details that you would use or the way that you would describe your characters doing certain things. Like, the buffoon hopelessly paws at the doorknob might be a way that you kind of mock or taunt the character, right? As opposed to saying something like, the man, fights for survival. He claws for the knob, but the werewolf is getting closer step by horrible step, whatever it is. It kind of expresses a different level of sympathy for that character, doesn't it? Or even if that's not part of your voice, whatever the character is that you're building for each, like the story itself has a voice. And you kind of have to ask yourself, what voice would this story best be told by? A lot of the time, comedy writers or comedic writers in modern spec style will pick this very sort of Shane Black inspired kind of fourth wall breaking, quippy, jokey kind of tone, and that works really. I said it with an annoying tone of my own voice for some reason, but that does work well in comedy, and I think also just you get used to reading that sort of tone in comedy, and in people that are reading scripts, they just have fun with that. Like in comedy specifically, your goal is to have the reader have fun, so however you go about that is perfectly on the table. So yeah, that's my tip for you. Don't worry way too much about voice, but in approaching voice, try to think of your script itself as having that personality to it, and the narrator of whoever's telling that story, their personality should kind of come through in the things that they choose to emphasize. Hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. I can really see the Crypt Keeper in the last script I read. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The kind of malicious narrator that's like almost doesn't hate the character, but like is reveling in the pain that they're feeling.
Sort of, yeah. It kind of makes the situation feel like hopeless, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. If not even the story world is on their side, like you usually see good examples of that, and like the Evil Dead movies have a lot of that great stuff where it's like the characters finally get to the phone to call for help, and they pick it up, and a spider crawls out of the phone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, every wrong thing that could possibly happen goes wrong. Your character goes to grab a bucket of water to throw it in the fire. It's a bucket of champagne instead. Like, all that kind of, like, the Home Alone approach to character writing, where you're kind of here to torment them, but the story has given you permission to do that in its own specific way. So yeah, there's a lot of different tones that you can try out, and I think early on, you should just be trying stuff. Even if it doesn't feel like your voice will naturally settle into that, like pick something that just seems fun or funny to you. Pick something that you're just like, oh, well, my grandpa was really good at telling stories. I'm going to kind of pretend like I'm him, sitting at the campfire, like inviting or like think of what is the sort of bedtime story tone. Totally different tone and narrator voice and approach. Like Princess Bride kind of stuff is like you have the narrator's clearly rooting for the characters in a story like that, right? Because they keep telling you, well, it's for true love and all these things where it's like, yeah, of course the narrator's on the hero's side. But where you find the nuance in that is up to you, and where you find the specificity of that is where your voice as a writer will kind of emerge from, is figuring out what would be a fun way to tell the story, and just what feels natural coming out of your, I was going to say mouth, hands, keystrokes, words on the page, whatever it is. Okay, good question though. Thank you for that. Let me reopen the floor to just any and all questions on anything we talked about today, and then I will open it to say who needs help on fixing their scripts in the capacity that I can do within the time frame of this class, of course. Feel free to either raise a hand or use our chat to write out your questions. Okay, seems like there's no more questions. We will, in that case, simply open the floor. Before we do, I'll remind everyone one more time, in case anybody ducks out, upcoming boot camps, Sundays at 10, starting on the 19th, Fridays 6 to 8, starting on the 17th, and novel boot camp happening Saturdays 12 to 2 into next year. All right, the floor's open. Who needs help fixing their scripts? Maybe no one. Maybe I can make dinner early. Luke says, I think everyone's just shy. Well, if 15 minutes go by and no students raise their hands legally, I get to leave the room and make ramen. So, I would, don't be shy. You can step right up. You can ask questions, or maybe you have a scene you wanted to look at. Whatever you guys want to do. However I can help you with your rewrite within the time that we have. Joel, go ahead. Hello.
I figured that I would join purely because announcers put their hand up. But yeah, I'm not really technically a rewrite. I'm not doing a rewrite, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So I've been rewriting since I started writing, basically, which I know now that you shouldn't do, but I found that out after I'd already started. So
you mean rewriting as you go?
Yeah, I rewrite very much as I go.
I see.
I did kind of finish a draft technically, but I never actually stopped writing. It's just been I've been writing on and off. It's complicated. Anyway,
I'm good. Just trying to move out of the way of the text.
You're falling over. Yeah, so I guess what I've been thinking about, because I've gotten stuck at some point, I'm really struggling with like Act 4 and figuring out what's happening, because I started my outline after starting writing, and so I guess because it's had so many iterations and I've been working on it for so long on and off continually, I'm sort of rereading it and sort of figuring out or refinding my outline in what I've written and sort of working from there. I don't know if there's any way for you to really help me. But yeah, that's where I am at the moment, just sort of reading my own script, figuring out what works with it, are there any like plot holes that need filling in, or that sort of thing, just because it's a mess right now.
Okay.
But yeah.
Have you gotten feedback, or you're saying you haven't even finished it enough to show to somebody yet?
I've been showing like individual scenes and stuff, like table reads. I think I've come to you before with the outline. I've gone to Nature as well, and spoken to other people about it. So I do have ideas, but there's like a couple bits that I'm still not 100% sure of. I kind of made one aspect of it. I mean, like, the characters are going to have a really tricky, it's going to be really tricky for the characters to figure out. So tricky I can't figure it out either.
Sure.
That's kind of issue I ended up in.
Mm-hmm.
So just rewriting that, because I realised that actually the scenario I put them in is too difficult for them to realistically manage.
That's a technique. Sometimes though, that's what Vince talked about this on the Breaking Bad season 3 and 4. How they would always just default to make the villain more formidable, make the situation more difficult, and then force the characters to come up with more and more and more creative solutions. To obviously, sometimes you can go too far and just back them into a corner that they would have no chance of getting out of. But you can use that too to just because if you're getting that feeling, then the viewers will be getting that feeling. There's no way out of this one, right? And that's a good feeling for the viewers to have, because, of course, there's a way out of this one. It's a TV show. It's made up, so we can always think of something, right? So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking about.
It just felt like it was too... It was just too much to put them through.
Okay.
Because they've already been through a ridiculous amount. And, give them, like, another 8 things to deal with at the same time, which is like... Yeah, maybe not.
I see. It was spreading them too thin, and there was too much going on. I see.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It was just one thing after another.
Go ahead. Yeah, understood.
That was it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had a specific question or a way that I could help. If there's any problems that you wanted to bring up now, I'm glad to look at or solve plot problems now if you have any. If not, then we have lab tomorrow if you want to bring it to that instead.
I don't have a specific question. I was just coming up here to try and help people through that side.
Okay, thanks for the updates. Everyone is free to use the time we have left to ask specific questions. He left the stage. Thank you, Joel. Let's hear more questions. Go ahead. Maybe Nacho has one.
Yeah, so I was just gonna, just mention I just did a rewrite during the last boot camp, and I'm pretty close to finishing. I'm working with a writing partner, and we just sort of had to find time to work together on this rewrite, and I think just the main thing that we were looking to do is to sort of, the first is draft 0 was kind of like too long, and then also like we wanted to just have a little bit clearer sense of like the main characters, like what the main character is trying to do at every given stage, I guess. Just to kind of, and that's basically what we've been doing in this draft, and it's going pretty well, I think. I was also just going to mention to everyone, if anyone else needed more feedback on their script, this is the last chance. You can upload it to this Google form, and you'll be matched with a swap partner. You can get some feedback if you need it. Yeah, so, and just, I don't know, it may seem a little bit overwhelming or intimidating, like Connor's sort of very practical step-by-step approach to rewrite, but like the first time when I saw that, I was like, my God, like that seems so much work or so complicated, but just going through the process, like it really helped. It's amazing to really have, like, finally I have a really clear sense, like this is my draft 2, and then now I have a game plan for like what is the draft to read or whatever. Like before I kind of worked a little bit like Joel, like where I would just sort of like constantly revise the script from the beginning. And it feels like, I don't know, we've been able to have real clear, just accomplish the goals that we have with a specific draft, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but like before it was just like, oh, I just want to make it better, It's like
you can almost look at it the same way that we look at a lot of just like what makes storytelling satisfying, sort of the Sanderson concept. What is it? Promise, progress, payoff. If you kind of allow yourself to have a system of promise, progress, payoff in your own work, right, it makes it easier to feel like you're moving forward and accomplishing things, because you're like, you have a list of objectives. You're checking off the objectives one at a time until they're all checked off. And you avoid having this feeling of like, well, now I'm done, I guess, or am I not? Or what do I do?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. Like, it just felt like it's never really finished, right? You don't know, like, is it, you can always improve a scene, or you can always like fix things, but it's more like getting to the stage where you have a 90-page, like a coherent 90-page story, which is really, really hard to get to that point. And I feel like, I don't know, this practical approach that Conor teaches, it makes it a lot easier to get there.
I think so. Try it out if you haven't tried it before. If you're more of a free-form discovery writer, maybe experiment. Okay, so we have a little time. We'll reopen the floor and see, last chance, if somebody wants to ask a plot problem, question, rewrite question, about any of the instruction we've done today, or maybe just a question about your own story or how to go about fixing or improving it. Here's a question from Luke, slightly more on topic. Do you have any tips when writing insert joke here moments? Well, but I guess the nice thing about writing insert joke here is that you can just leave it at that for your draft 0. I think that you should have a sense of the basic joke density of it. And the more we talk, like comedy, what is it? Mark Twain says that explaining jokes is like dissecting frogs, because we understand how the frog works, but you kill the frog in the process, which is true. So it's like the more we get into things like, what's the joke density per page of your script, it starts feeling really ridiculous and dead and lifeless and these things like that. But in any case, at the end of the day, you can sort of break it down. Like, open an episode of 30 Rock, and you'll see this script has about 5 jokes per page. Or an episode of, like any of these really quippy back and forth shows, they're going to have like 3 to 6 jokes, sometimes more, jokes per page, right? If you look at like a Naked Gun movie or Police Squad movie or any of the Leslie Nielsen movies, it's like pretty much nothing but just jokes strung together. And because of that, you should have a sense of what is the rhythm that each page should basically sort of feel like. And you can kind of develop this internal barometer for, has it been too long before someone has said something funny? Because you should kind of have this like imaginary audience in your mind the entire time. Not like a laugh track necessarily, but it's like they should be laughing at the things that you expect them to the best of your ability. Obviously, you can't always tell what they will laugh exactly at. But my advice for writing insert joke here moments is that they should come because you know what the joke ratio to page joke funny laugh ratio, whatever it's called, should kind of be. You should know about how many times they're going to be funny per page, and you can kind of identify areas that feel like they would make a good landing spot for a joke. That's what you're mostly doing, is identifying the territory where jokes could occupy. You don't really have to do any more work to figuring out what is the setup, punchline, payoff, or anything else about them. So I wouldn't throw them in randomly. Like, you can't put insert joke here on every single line. You should assess if the page has enough setups and payoffs on it, and if it doesn't, then you can try to find a spot that seems like a good territory for a joke to live, and you can write insert joke here if you want to. But then by the time that you get to the rewrite, you may find that if the page is working, you may just not need a joke there at all. So go easy on them is, I guess, what I would say as well. All right. Well, we have technically half an hour more. If anyone has questions, plot problems, we could also end early so I can make my delicious broccoli chicken ramen. What do you guys have? Any other specific questions about your stories, your rewrite projects, or any of the steps that we talked about in terms of rewriting? Obviously, I can't stop thinking about this ramen. I see a few folks typing in the chat, so I'll let you guys finish your comments there, or you can also feel free to unmute and ask out loud. Okay, here's some questions. All right, question from Monique. Should I start with writing my ideas in my notebook or use the software to start? I would start in so the first document that I use in my process to writing a full-length script book or anything else, I call it a sketchbook. You can have a physical written notebook sketchbook if you want to, but whatever medium it is that you're using, I would start in that. So if writing by hand is helpful to you and is useful to you, go ahead. You can use a notebook, use as many as you want. You are going to have to transition to a digital sketchbook eventually, and that would be sort of where I would take the best stuff from the handwritten sketchbook and then move them to your digital sketchbook, which will be a more refined version of just the ideas that you're sure you want to include. Like, I have multiple handwritten notebooks totally filled out with just random scribblings and stuff, but if I were ready to move that script actually to the next stage, it would be move ahead to digital sketchbook, and then from there I can go through all the other normal steps of writing, which would be logline, story beats, scene cards, go to pages, rewrite. So yeah, if that works for you, absolutely use handwriting at first. Luke says, I'm thinking about food scenes, and why do most of them appear in Act 1? I have no idea. I've never noticed that most food scenes appear in Act 1. Is that true? Dakota says, don't make a 30-minute scene where a woman named Meatloaf... Oh, no, not named Meatloaf. A woman makes meatloaf. Like a Belgian movie that's considered amazingly well written but has a 30-minute meatloaf making sequence. Kind of like Nomadland and stuff, right? Question from Tom York. How do you manifest scenes? I have no idea what that means. Maybe you can, clarify. Joel theorizes maybe because the food is a good way to watch your character go about their daily life. That's a good point. Maybe that could be why. Although most of the time, what is it? The family's making a big, beautiful breakfast in the morning, and the teenager comes in, they're like, can't stay, Mom, gotta go. They just have a one bite of one piece of toast, and they leave like this pitcher of orange juice and like a whole tray of biscuits and bacon and eggs that are like artfully arranged for them. Such a tragedy. They waste so much food in movies. Or somebody orders a drink at a restaurant, they've got like a giant drink, they take one sip of it and then they leave it there. Joel says the Breaking Bad breakfast thing. Yeah, breakfast in Breaking Bad is sort of a recurring barometer of how well the family is kind of doing. So food can be used for interesting stuff in scenes, definitely. Not the focus of the class today, but I'm glad somebody brought it up because it's a fun topic. Dakota says, scenes in general, thoughts on tackling therapy scenes. Any great films to recommend besides Good Will Hunting and The King's Speech? Okay, so thoughts on tackling therapy scenes. So the therapy scene kind of really blew up with The Sopranos. And that show pretty masterfully used the idea of the main characters in therapy, and in these sessions that we kind of cut back and forth between, they sort of go on to either highlight what the theme of the episode will be or to reflect whatever specific development the main character is going through in that episode. They are close sister scenes to the classroom sequence where we start in the classroom and the teacher's like, well, but Socrates says that free will doesn't exist. And then obviously it's going to come up in some way in the story, and then the bell rings, obviously, right away. So yeah, we don't want to lean too heavily on them as a means of exposition or as kind of lazily revealing the interiority of the characters. Like, we can't use it as too quick of a shortcut to reveal what's going on in your character's head, unless that's something that you have kind of, like, you've carefully built out this relationship between the character and the therapist. And also, moreover, like, the audience's relationship to those scenes and what we can understand to be gaining or learning from those scenes. I want to bring up, like, the therapy scenes in Mr. Robot, which are actually quite well done, and I think early on in the show do feel a little bit like here's everything going on with the main character, but as it develops and we sort of see how his relationship with the therapist changes, and changes a lot in later seasons from what I understand, though I have not seen them yet, then you sort of get the idea that this feels like this guy is, I think it's like court-ordered therapy too, which always adds that nice extra layer of it, where the character's like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to reveal these things, but if I'm forced to, then fine, here's my truth, or whatever, right? So I guess this is more of a don't than a do, but don't use them too much to expose what's going on with the character, and every time we cut to a therapy scene, you can't always rely upon or use as a crutch this idea that the character, we get right to the relevant point where they immediately just say the thing that is directly on their mind and they state it very clearly and unambiguously. Because even in therapy sessions, people don't always, like, people in movies are too often perfect at their therapy, right? They know exactly what to say. I guess you're right, my mother is the root of all of this, you know, like stuff like that. It's just we come to conclusions too quickly. When more often, I think realistic therapy is like a constant conversation and negotiation where it's not like we come to one brilliant conclusion that that's the root of everything. So don't use it to solve problems too efficiently or cleanly for your characters, and don't dump exposition in those scenes that we could gain other ways. You want those scenes to feel realistic and dynamic and not like they exist only there. They're only in there to give us info about the characters or to illustrate what's going on with them. We have to have other ways of doing that. Think of that idea, this boring, played out idea of show, don't tell, and ask yourself, how can we show the character feeling these things, even within the context of somebody asking them to tell about their feelings, right? Because so rarely are people really able to clearly and incisively articulate what is going on with them, especially if they're younger. Like kids in movies are so unnaturally, crazily good at reflection and analysis and apologizing and all these things that like kids don't ever go and do. So yeah, especially for younger characters, they're not going to be able to articulate well in that setting. You have to use their other cues or other developments of that relationship between them and the therapist to move the story forward. So that's, I guess, my little tangent on tips on therapy scenes. I hope that was useful. Anything else? Any other questions, problems, things you guys would like to hear more about related to rewriting, re-outlining, things like this? If not, we will wrap up a little early for today. So we will have one more of these sessions, this How to Fix Your Script session. This is going to be, it's Sunday 10 to noon, right, Nacho?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Anything else you want to share or announce coming up? So do you want to maybe clarify for people how this swap will work today?
Sure. So, yeah. So it looks like we didn't get any other submissions, so no one else is trying to swap. But you can come to this session on Sunday. So there's one more chance also at our normal Tuesday swap, which is every Tuesday 5 p.m. Pacific. So yeah, if you're interested in, the idea is this is, kind of helping you prepare your rewrite. So if you wanted to do a rewrite during the upcoming TV Pilot Bootcamp or Feature Bootcamp, you'll be ready to go. So you just, you do need to get some feedback before the bootcamp starts. So you'll be able to like have an idea of what you're going to change. But yeah, there's two more chances to get feedback. If anyone else, maybe you want to make some final sort of like polishes or something. I think Leckluger mentioned just working on some placeholders. So bring it to Sunday session.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nacho. Anything else you want to... Go ahead.
Oh, and just also wanted to mention the novel bootcamp is, still wide open if anyone's working on a novel or NaNoWriMo or whatever. This is a great sort of a kind of a guided process where you can get help, as you're working on the writing process. You should already have an outline of some kind, but this will be going on until I think January 27th. So I think you still have time to finish your novel if you're interested in the novel bootcamp.
Great. Thank you so much for that. If there's no more questions or things that you guys would like to work on right now, then we are going to wrap up early. We hope to see you at the other events that are coming up or the other servers. So again, if you've not yet signed up, do go to scriptcamp.net and you can sign up for unlimited classes from just $19 a month if you buy yearly. You can click here to enroll, get access to that video library, huge discounts off consultations and proofreads, 100 hours of live interactive events and classes every month, advanced labs, writer's lab, novel bootcamp, everything. So check out scriptcamp.net to see all of our different options. You can get coverage, proofreading, consultations, things like this on your script.
Also, we have a table. Mm-hmm. We have a table read starting in about 6 hours. So, for anyone who is, maybe a different part of the world or just a night owl, there's still time to submit your script for the Saturday table reads. They accept submissions all the way up until the event starts.
Great. Thank you so much. And is that full scripts or are they doing just sections from them?
Yeah, we do complete scripts as well. It does cost 100 script coins to do a full script. Mm-hmm. But here's the form to fill out if you have like up to 5 pages.
Thank you for that. So that's in the chat if anybody wants to pull that up. And if that's all we have for today, then that's it. We would love to see you guys at your next Script Camp class, workshop, or event. They're happening all the time, so we just know that you'll find plenty to enjoy participating in on the servers. Thanks so much, guys. You have a great rest of your Friday. Oh, Joel, do you have maybe a question or comment? Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to add for Leckluger that we also have writer's voice for novels and other forms of media. Table reads is for screenplays, writer's voice for poems, novels, etc. on WordCamp.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's on our other server, WordCamp. All right, we're wrapping up. So everybody will have we'll wish you a great rest of your Friday, and maybe we'll see you tomorrow for Novel Bootcamp, Table Read, or any number of other weekend events. The weekends are quite busy here. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great rest of your nights.